As we get ready to close out 2025, let us look back at the key stories from the year that was in the world of wrestling. You know, I came across this tweet from Elite Rockers, which has a lot of followers. This was from September 19th, 2024. WWE in 2025 is going to be in God mode. Raw on Netflix is going to be uncensored and edgier. SmackDown is going to be 3 hours. A megastar-loaded men's Royal Rumble match. John Cena possibly winning his 17th world title. The Rock and Roman Reigns dream feud. I'm so excited. God mode, he said. If this year was God mode, then that term has lost all meaning. This year was supposed to be the retirement tour for John Cena, Hiroshi Tanahashi, which of course is culminating at the Tokyo Dome on January 4th. And if you remember, at the beginning of the year, Jeff Jarrett. Now, you know, it's rare that we see someone get an entire year to say goodbye in wrestling. If anything, it's a match, right? And even that's rare. A lot of wrestlers never get to have a proper retirement match. A lot of wrestlers, they never actually retire. This year we had two of them, two major stars who announced their retirement in advance, and they got a year-long tour. And regardless of what you thought of those tours, good for them that they got the chance to at least go out on their own terms or somewhat on their own terms. The Cena and the Tanahashi retirement tours, again, they could not have been any more different for all the reasons that I mentioned earlier in the podcast. Tanahashi, he wrestled over 140 matches this year. Cena wrestled in 18 matches. Most of those Tanahashi matches were not even main events on those shows, but still, two of the biggest stars in the history of the business. Cena's tour, very disappointing. Double J, though, if you remember, the beginning of the year, he started by announcing that he had signed a new one-year deal with AEW, which was going to be his final contract as an active professional wrestler. This was to have been his final year in the ring. And he made his intentions very clear that he wanted to win the AEW World Championship. And he started a feud with MJF that was quickly dropped, I'm sure, because Tony Khan saw the online backlash and he panicked. I mean, those are his people. And so the story was dropped and it was never mentioned again, which was for the better. Now, Jarrett is talking about his upcoming 40th anniversary in the business, which is coming up in April. And he says he still has certain in-ring goals that he has left to fulfill. So evidently, this will not be Jeff Jarrett's final year in the ring. A pro wrestler lying about his retirement. I've never heard of such a thing. But let us not forget the one retirement tour that never was, but was supposed to be this year. In Double J, Jeff Jarrett. We had Kenny Omega returning at the Tokyo Dome at Wrestle Dynasty and stealing the show. Back on January 5th. That was against Gabe Kidd. Now, I want you to think about this. Omega almost died. I mean, that's how serious of a health situation he was in with the, with the diverticulitis and the surgery that he had. And it was a slow recovery. He was out of the ring for over a year. He opened the year against Gabe Kidd with the kind of match that they had. Which, if you were to tell me that that was your match of the year, and this was on January 5th, if you were to tell me that was your match of the year, I wouldn't argue with you. That's how great that match was. He opened the year with that. And then the matches with Takeshita at Revolution and Speedball and Ricochet at Dynasty, Anarchy in the Arena that he was a part of, Okada at All in Texas. You know, he's been more downplayed and hasn't had a lot of big singles matches in recent months, but his return at Wrestle Dynasty was a big deal after being gone for so long. We had Monday Night Raw this year premiering on Netflix, right? That was the big, $5 billion deal? 5 billion, 10 billion? What's another 5 billion? I think it was 5 billion. But we had the premiere on Netflix, which was the start of a new era for this show, right? It had been on cable television ever since the show premiered in 1993. And for the first time now, it was on a streaming service. It's very different, right? The world is changing. But on that night, we had the return of The Rock, who really wasn't The Rock. It was more Dwayne, the board member, and he was praising and putting over Cody Rhodes, the man that he was feuding with the year before. That was weird. Sharing tequila with him. Hulk Hogan came out that night. He got booed by the crowd, even though he was there to promote his beer, and he was, out there with Jimmy Hart waving the flag around, and man, he got booed out of the building, and how sad it is. That will be the final appearance that people remember him for on WWE television. Why they even thought trotting him out there would be a good idea, I will never know. But that probably was the most memorable moment from that Raw premiere on Netflix. We had the debut of Penta. Debuted on Raw January 13th against Chad Gable, and he got off to a hot start. I feel like in recent months, they've definitely lost their way with Penta. But, he's still in a place where I think 2026, he should do better, right? It's kind of hard for me to believe that they won't find something worthy for Penta to do or put a championship on him at some point next year. He's super popular. The way he got over almost instantly with the WWE audience was very cool to see. And hopefully they have bigger things in mind for him in 2026. I feel like I forget the injury recently. I feel like he's definitely been, phased down in recent months to a level where he should be a little higher up on the card. There was some announcer drama earlier this year, if you remember, with Corey Graves after he was demoted to NXT. He did not really react very well to that. And then he disappeared for a little bit. But in the end, everything got smoothed over, and I just heard him last night on the AAA show that was streaming on YouTube. He's doing that. He's doing, the stuff with Michael Cole, working together again. So Corey is great. I'm glad everything got smoothed over. We had the announcement January 16th. WWE and TNA forming a multi-year partnership. We got a press release and everything just to make it official. And boy, has that been a big deal for TNA. More so TNA than for WWE, although WWE has benefited from this arrangement as well. This is something that even a few years ago, let alone 10 or 15 years ago, when Vince McMahon was in charge, would have been unthinkable. Like, absolutely unthinkable. Remember that dumb match they did on Raw? I don't know what year it was, but it was like they had a fake Trump and a fake Rosie O'Donnell having some dumb match on Raw. Vince McMahon was sitting at ringside, and the crowd is chanting TNA. And I remember reading about how, angry Vince was. And I'm like, good. Because when you put out shit, that's the sort of thing that they should be giving back to you. But there was a period of time where, you would hear those initials occasionally chanted, right? And people backstage would not respond well. It would be the equivalent if a WWE crowd suddenly broke out in an AEW chant, right? I'm sure Triple H would be back there smarting about it, right? They were not on friendly terms with TNA is the point I'm making. And so the idea that now not only are they working together and they have a talent exchange, but they have formalized it. They had a press release out for it. And there's a multi-year partnership between these two companies. And we have TNA talents on fucking WrestleMania. It's and with their championships. And it's really been kind of lopsided in terms of the talents WWE has been able to feature. It's not like TNA's getting a lot of kind of upper level elite WWE names popping up in wrestling matches on their shows. The closest thing they got was AJ Styles, who just did a quick dip in and a quick dip out back at Slammiversary. But again, something that would have been absolutely unthinkable just a few years ago actually became a reality here in 2025. Joe Hendry appearing as the TNA World Champion in the Royal Rumble match this year on February 1st. Case in point. Jey Uso winning the men's Royal Rumble. A very polarizing decision, but boy, it led to a lot of other shit in the months that followed when it came to Jey and the World Heavyweight Championship. Some may like it, some may not, but that was one of the big stories of this year was the Jey Uso push. We had Ricky Starks, now Ricky Saints, making his surprise debut on the February 11th episode of NXT. The only surprise about it was how quickly it happened, because we had only learned, it was only reported the day before, I think, that he had gotten an early release from Tony Khan, and then boom, he's on NXT the very next night. And now, of course, he's a former NXT champion in the upper mix for that title, and I have every expectation that we will see him on Raw or SmackDown by the middle of 2026. Hiroki Goto finally winning the IWGP Championship, something I don't think a lot of people ever expected to happen at nearly 46 years of age, beating Zack Sabre Jr. back on February 11th. He held that title for 138 days. And now look at him. He's playing E. Honda in the new Street Fighter movie coming out next year. You got Cody Rhodes in the movie. You got Roman Reigns in the movie. And now you got Hiroki Goto. The Rock was brought back to television. Remember when The Rock was on SmackDown on February 21st? They were in New Orleans that night, and they brought The Rock back to make the big announcement that WrestleMania 42 is coming back to New Orleans. And that was the same night where he said he also wanted Cody's soul. And that whole fiasco began. But yes, they trotted The Rock out there to announce that they were bringing WrestleMania next year to the Big Easy, only to turn around, what was it? 2 months, 3 months later, whatever it was, and say, psych! Not so fast, New Orleans. We're coming back to Vegas. Unbelievable. And then, like I said, the Cody Soul nonsense. We had the Elimination Chamber on March 1st. John Cena not only wins the chamber, but he does the unthinkable and turns heel in his retirement year. Years after people wanted to see him turn heel. They had accepted him. It had been years since he was being booed by the crowds, and we were hearing, let's go Cena, Cena sucks. And now they turn him heel, and he sells his soul to The Rock after he had already won the chamber and guaranteed himself a world championship match at WrestleMania. So you could also look at that and go, well, that doesn't really make sense. He already got his title shot. It would have actually hit a lot better if they would have waited. If they insisted on doing the heel turn to incorporate it into the finish of the match at WrestleMania, right? Very much like what they did with Austin at WrestleMania 17. It's not like it would be the equivalent of Steve Austin outlasting 29 other men and winning the Royal Rumble that year and then turning heel and then going to WrestleMania to wrestle The Rock. It's like, dude, you won the Rumble. You got your shot. You know, you didn't have to do the heel turn beforehand. No, they did it at the end of the match. And in hindsight, it was an absolutely terrible business decision, which Austin admits to this very day he made a mistake. I mean, there's a lot of things along this John Cena tour that we can look at and say was a mistake. This was one of them. But in the moment, it was one of the greatest things that they had ever done, right? In and of itself, in a vacuum, the second best heel turn as a turn in wrestling history. Hogan will always be number one. Hogan, the red and yellow, going to the dark side, joining and forming the NWO, that will always be number one. But they had it. They had something special. They had people buzzing in a way that people had not been buzzing in years. And it all got pissed away. We also had the announcement on April 19th that WWE was acquiring AAA Wrestling in Mexico, a product that was already trying very hard to be like WWE for many years. All the Lucha Libre traditionalists who have talked about how worried they are about how WWE might change the product into more of a WWE type of product. The people that watch AAA and know AAA have said that they basically have been trying to be like WWE for decades. But what WWE was able to do coming in, right? They have upped the production values. It has provided more exposure for AAA talents like Mr. Iguana on WWE shows, but also exposure for WWE and NXT talents in AAA, like Dominic Mysterio, who headlined last night's show, El Grande Americano, who headlined last night's show, Javon Evans, Ethan Page, right? Lola Vice, who basically is on excursion down there. So those have all been positives. Now, there are other changes that I'm sure could potentially be made or have been made, maybe behind the scenes, and maybe little minor things that change the product that go against the culture or something that people don't like. They were always going to come in and make certain changes. The question is, like, in the long run, what does this look like? It's still too early to know. We're not even out of the year yet. Like, is this effectively 5 years from now going to just be, NXT Mexico? Or are they truly going to try to keep it as independent as possible and continue running it the way they're running it now? We don't know the answer to that. What we do know is that WWE recently secured a television deal with Fox to air AAA events, including Triple Mania, on Fox in Mexico. And there is talk that they may be close to making an announcement about a TV deal for AAA here in the U.S. Now, this stuff with AAA has not in any way affected the year that CMLL has had. They just sold their 1 millionth ticket to Arena Mexico this year alone. You know, WWE may make more money this year than any other promotion in the world, but the hottest pro wrestling company in the world this year may well have been CMLL. When you can put 15 or 16,000 people in the same venue every Friday night, week after week, and you're pulling in foreigners too, not just Mexican wrestling fans who show up to these shows, and they run 3 times a week in that building, just that one building. Not that they don't run other places. I'm just saying in that one building alone, they're running multiple shows a week, and they're still putting all of these people in there week after week. They keep coming back. It's pretty incredible, the run that they've been on this year. We have Paul Heyman betraying CM Punk and Roman Reigns to align with Seth Rollins at WrestleMania. That was on April 19th. Paul Heyman is not someone to be trusted. I mean, that's the one thing we've learned about him over the years. He's turned on more people than Pamela Anderson did back in the 90s. And I don't know why these wrestlers haven't figured that out yet. Seth Rollins just found out, right? A couple months ago. But Paul Heyman turning on his best friend and turning on his tribal chief to align with Seth Rollins. And this was the beginning of the vision. And I can't say that this has been any great shakes, but that was the big storyline development coming out of WrestleMania. We had John Cena at that same WrestleMania the very next night, April 20th, winning his record-breaking 17th World Championship in the worst possible way. I don't think if you would poll 50 different wrestling fans going back 6 months, not 6 months, but like a year, 2 years, 3 years, and said, hey, you had the ability, you had the pen, you're going to script out John Cena's big 17th record-breaking world title win at WrestleMania. How does it look? How does it go down? How do you build to it? What's the story you tell? I don't know that any of those 50 people would have done it the way the WWE did it. It's like they did it in the worst possible way. Like, even if you take Travis Scott out of it, and that was bad enough having him out there, even remove him from the equation, to turn Cena heel and have him win the 17th World Championship with a kick to the dick and a belt shot. I mean, could they have botched this any worse than they did? On May 2nd, there was a wave of talent releases, 17 in total from the WWE and NXT rosters, including names like Braun Strowman, Dakota Kai, Shayna Baszler, Cora Jade, Gigi Dolan, Jakara Jackson, who's now Mara Sade in TNA, and others as well. Trick Williams, he beat Joe Hendry to become the first WWE star to ever win a TNA title. That was on May 25th. Trick Williams, by the way, get ready. He's main roster bound. I don't know what brand it'll be. I'm sure it'll be SmackDown because that's where Lash Legend is, but he is going to be on the main roster starting at the beginning of 2026. We had WWE choosing not to renew R-Truth's contract, only to then bring him right back weeks later after the backlash, not just from fans, but also apparently from talent behind the scenes. They were very unhappy. R-Truth was like, he was an institution in this company. And I know you watch him on television, he looks like he belongs in an institution. But he was an institution there for so long and so well-liked. You know, just maybe the most well-liked member of that locker room. And it blindsided a lot of people when they saw that his name had been cut because people thought, man, not Truth. But yeah. Now, some people believe that it was never really, a reality that he was actually released and it was something that they were just filming for WWE Unreal. I believe it is going to be a part of the Unreal season that's debuting, I think, on January 20th. I believe the new season drops on Netflix. I think it was absolutely real. I don't think that it was something that was manufactured just for Unreal. I think it's a real situation that happened. And of course, now they're going to do an entire episode on it. But that happened in May, right? That had to be in May. And then it was only, maybe it wasn't even a matter of weeks. It was very soon thereafter. Because I think when he showed up, it was Money in the Bank, I believe. When he ran into the ring, he was dressed up as the mystery man, pulled the mask off, everybody cheered. We had Mariah May making her debut on NXT as Blake Monroe. That was on June 3rd. I'm a big Mariah May fan. I don't know that she really needs to spend much more time down in NXT. She could definitely make some waves on the main roster right now. SmackDown could certainly use her. I don't know if I would have her on the same roster with Tiffany Stratton. I might want to separate those two out. Knowing them, they'll make them a tag team. But Mariah May is going to do big things in WWE. I think she's fantastic. Goldberg returned to challenge Gunther in his retirement match at Saturday night's main event. This was the same weekend as All In Texas. It was like the battle between WWE and AEW on the same night. And Goldberg went out there, and you know what? It was not a quick, 3-minute thing. I think it was like a 13 or 14-minute match. It was not a bad match. Certainly not by Goldberg standards. By Gunther standards, yes, it was probably one of the worst matches he had all year, but it was still a good match. And Goldberg, he did the honors on his way out, and then he was going to cut this heartfelt speech, which was actually a good speech. But we only got to see maybe 10 seconds of it before NBC cut the feed, and Goldberg was not happy about that. Goldberg was not happy about any of this. And, he did that podcast interview where it might have been with Ariel Helwani and teased that, in 2 weeks, I'll be able to say more. And 2 weeks went by and we never heard from Goldberg. And in fact, that was a hell of a lot longer than 2 weeks ago. And he's been silent on that ever since. I think he might have been gotten to by somebody. CM Punk wrestled John Cena in Saudi Arabia and apologized to the fans in Saudi for comments that he had made years before. This is what John Cena has cited as his favorite all-time wrestling moment. CM Punk apologizing to the Saudi fans on the pre-show. Adam Cole vacated the TNT Championship and delivered what may well end up being his retirement speech at All In Texas. His situation is very sad. He has just been plagued by injuries these last few years that have really derailed his career. I don't know that we're ever going to see him back in the ring again. And the only thing I hope for his sake is that, he can, because he's still dealing apparently with some pretty bad symptoms, I guess, of this concussion that he sustained. And he's had some bad ones before. I don't even think he can fly still, and this was in July. So my hope is that he can recover enough to where he can live a normal, healthy life. If that means he never gets back in the ring again, then so be it. He doesn't have anything to prove to anybody. And I think, honestly, even if he never wrestles again, he'll have a job for life with AEW. They will find other things for him to do. Again, he is beloved. He's well-liked by everybody. He's just the nicest guy. And there's any number of things that he could be doing beyond just training. If he wanted to start training people, you can have him as an announcer. You can have him as some sort of figure on the show if you wanted him to be in that role. I just hope, whatever it is that he does, I hope he can get back physically to as close to 100% as he was before. But the whole situation is just incredibly sad. AJ Styles returned to TNA for the first time since 2013 at Slammiversary, which was very cool to see. It would have been nicer to see him in a match. I don't know if that'll ever happen, but that was a big homecoming for him and big rub for Leon Slater. The way that AJ put him over on the mic. On July 24th, Hulk Hogan, Terry Bollea, passed away at the age of 71. This right here, in my opinion, as far as wrestling stories of the year, this was the biggest story. Hulk Hogan dying this year was the biggest story because Hogan will go down as obviously one of the biggest and most popular, well-known professional wrestlers of all time. He will be number one on many people's lists. He's on all the Mount Rushmores. Well, maybe not all of them, but I mean, a lot of people will have him on the Mount Rushmore. They know and understand his place in history. You didn't have to be a Hulk Hogan fan growing up. In fact, you could have hated Hulk Hogan and wanted to see him lose. But you cannot deny his place in history and the impact and influence that he had on that company. When they went national, he was the right guy in the right place at the right time. And him and Vince, they made the perfect combo. And it took Hogan to heights that Vern Gagne could never imagine. And Hogan passing away was a surprise. It was major media headline news all over the world. And it was a very weird situation, even to this day, as far as exactly what happened and how it happened and the surgery and the phrenic nerve that we heard about being cut by accident. And there might be a malpractice suit. We haven't heard anything about it since, but he was just getting started to be the figurehead commissioner, the face of this new Real American Freestyle project that he and Eric Bischoff were a part of. And now it's just Bischoff. But that was what Hogan was about to embark on before he passed away. We had the return of Brock Lesnar, returning to WWE at SummerSlam, which was a surprise to a lot of people, as the Janelle Grant lawsuit is still, of course, raging on. It has not been settled. It has not gone to trial. We don't even know if it's going to go to trial or if it's going to go to arbitration. And again, he hasn't been accused of anything, but just his name being attached to it. And his name being attached to text messages in the suit that don't paint him in a very good light. That is the reason why WWE has had him on ice for 2 years now. And with no movement really in the case, it was surprising that, there he is at the end of SummerSlam. They've decided to bring him back. And he gave John Cena an F5, and then they went on to have a completely pointless, terrible match at WrestlePalooza. We had WWE announcing a deal to move their main roster PLEs from Peacock to ESPN. Multi-billion-dollar deal. That was a big deal, no pun intended. And that led into, of course, WrestlePalooza being announced. And WrestlePalooza was programmed up against AEW All Out. So Tony Khan said, you know what? I'm going to move the start time up. And as a viewer, I'm grateful he did that. But that was some big competition that weekend. We had the moment. I put this on my list because I just thought this was fantastic. Just the visual of it. It didn't go anywhere. It didn't lead to anything in particular, but the visual of Omos and Microman from Triple Mania on August 16th. That to me, that's pro wrestling is what that is. That is what that is. We had Naomi, who had quite the comeback year in terms of her character and her persona, announcing that she was pregnant and therefore had to vacate the Women's World Championship that she successfully cashed in her Money in the Bank for at Evolution. It just felt like, man, she's finally really settling into this heel turn and this character, and she's getting going. And then Jimmy just did not proceed with caution. And so now we're not going to see Naomi for a while. But she was doing some of the best work of her career up until that point. But she announced her pregnancy and vacated the title back on August 18th. On August 23rd, Raja Jackson, the son of Quentin Rampage Jackson, nearly beat Syko Stu to death. That was at a Knox Pro show. The fact that he is still out and about is a disgrace, but he has since been charged with 1 felony and 1 misdemeanor count of battery. And he is facing potentially up to 7 years in prison. I don't know that he'll serve a single year. Syko Stu, there was talk that he may not want to cooperate with prosecutors, which could mean no action is taken, although you would think they have plenty of video evidence. How is this guy going to get off without any kind of punishment? But we're still waiting to find out how this is all going to shake out. AJ Lee made her return to the ring after 10 years in Chicago on SmackDown. That was back on September 5th. Something that I wasn't sure, honestly, was ever going to happen. That was a surprise even to me. WrestleMania 43 was announced in 2027 for Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. They made that announcement back on September 12th. We had Andrade debuting on AEW Dynamite and attacking Kenny Omega back on October 1st. Only to then find out the WWE was executing a 12-month non-compete that apparently he was under and didn't even realize it, so therefore he has not been seen on AEW television ever since. He came in, he laid out one of their top stars, and he left like a boss. But now it sounds like Andrade may be on the road to some sort of resolution with WWE. Hopefully that is the case, and I fully expect to see him back on television within the next few months. Konosuke Takeshita won the IWGP World Championship after winning the G1 Climax, but he won the title. He said, I'm not waiting until the Tokyo Dome. I want my shot now. And he got it, and he won the title, and that was back on October 13th. We had Mercedes Moné collecting even more championships and breaking Ultimo Dragon's record with 11 plus concurrent title reigns this year. That was a record that stood since 1997, and it fell this year. And now Mercedes is falling. She's at the beginning of her downfall. We had John Cena winning the Intercontinental title for the very first time and getting the Grand Slam. That was on Raw from Boston on November 10th. We had the first ever women's blood and guts match in AEW. That was on November 12th. TNA announced a new television deal with AMC Networks starting in 2026. That announcement came down on December 2nd. And honestly is the biggest announcement that company has made outside of the partnership with WWE. Their biggest announcement in years. It will be the first time they are on a real network that has actual viewers since the days of Spike TV, which was 11 years ago. So that will be a big, big way for TNA to kick off the new year. And last but not least, John Cena closing out his retirement tour in a loss to Gunther and tapping out in his final match on Saturday night's main event on December 13th. It will be a decision, as it has been since it happened, that will be debated and argued whether it was good or bad. At the end of the day, John Cena, he thought it was great. So to him, that's all that matters. Everybody else, they can quibble and debate about it. But it was the end of an era. It was the end of, one chapter in WWE. I do believe we will never again see John Cena back in the ring. And for all this talk about his retirement tour, that is how they closed it out, with a loss to Gunther. Now, there were also a number of notable wrestling-related deaths in 2025, and I wanted to make note of them here. The first one, and this is not, I'm sure I'm missing some names here, but these are some of the key names that I have kept track of throughout the year. The first was a name from the old territory days. He also worked for both WWE and WCW. Black Bart died on January 9th at the age of 76 after battling stage 4 colon cancer that had spread to his liver. Mr. Baseball Bob Uecker, a member of the WWE Hall of Fame, died on January 16th, 10 days shy of his 91st birthday after battling lung cancer for the past couple of years. He won a World Series with the St. Louis Cardinals in 1964. He spent 54 seasons as the play-by-play radio voice for the Milwaukee Brewers. And he was inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame in 2010 after appearing in 2 different WrestleManias. WrestleMania 3 as the guest ring announcer for the biggest match in WrestleMania history between Hulk Hogan and Andre the Giant, and again at WrestleMania 4. Colonel De Beers, who gained fame in the dying days of the AWA, he died on January 22nd at the age of 80. Gran Hamada passed away on February 15th at the age of 74, one of the first men to be trained at the New Japan Dojo, and first on excursion, which is how he became very proficient in Lucha Libre, which he then brought back to Japan. He may well have been the first to bring it there. And he also held the WWF light heavyweight title on 2 occasions. This was through WWF's working relationship with the UWA. Perro Aguayo was actually the first champion, but I don't think WWE acknowledges him as the first champion. I think they consider Taka Michinoku the first when they brought the belt back in 1997. But he was also the first and only WWF Intercontinental Tag Team Champion alongside Perro Aguayo. In 1991, I'll bet you didn't even know those existed. That was until WWF severed ties with the promotion a few months later. I think the titles stuck around, but they no longer had the WWF initials attached to them. Osamu Nishimura passed away on February 28th at just 53 years old after battling stage 4 esophageal cancer for some time. Despite his cancer, he was still wrestling almost right up until the very end. He tagged with Dory Funk Jr. last year in a double hell current blast death match. Oh man, there's a little shiver going up Tony Khan's spine. He's writing this down. And also wrestled a no ropes, barbed wire, and giant electric explosive bat match. Okay, now that one I think I have to add as a new stipulation for our Be the Booker segment on the streams. No ropes, barbed wire, and giant electric explosive bat match. Wow. And he did it while he was sick. He had to first sign waivers allowing him to wrestle, and he had doctors stationed at ringside just in case. I guess you would have to, though, whether you're sick or not. You'd have to have doctors somewhere in the vicinity if you're going to have a no ropes, barbed wire, giant electric explosive bat match. Bill Mercer, the voice of world-class championship wrestling in the 80s. He made it all the way to the age of 99 before he died on March 23rd. Legendary newscaster, really all around, not just in wrestling, but he even covered the JFK assassination as a Dallas TV reporter. And while he may not have been a wrestler or a celebrity like some of the other folks on this list, on April 7th, we lost a friend and a fellow podcaster in Kevin Scondato, better known as Kevin Castle of the Don Tony and Kevin Castle show, among the other shows that he did. That wasn't the only one. But he was only 56 years old, and he had been dealing with some health issues that were a lot more serious than a lot of people knew, myself included. I always enjoyed my interactions with Kev and really wish that we could have met up, once just to shoot the shit in person. Because I've had the chance to meet his brother John and DT and Mish and Joey and so many other people in this space. But Kev was always kind of an island unto himself, right? Always working at the club. He was, the one responsible for booking the bands. But his death was just a shock to everyone, and truly one of the OGs of the podcasting space. He is still missed even today. Hisashi Shinma, the former president, quote unquote, of the World Wrestling Federation, he passed away on April 21st at the age of 90. He was the on-screen president of the company in the same vein as Jack Tunney and Gorilla Monsoon after him, through part of the 70s and into the early 80s. So basically right before Tunney. More importantly, though, he was Antonio Inoki's right-hand man behind the scenes in New Japan, and he was the booker there. And he was inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame as a legacy inductee in 2019. The world lost Mongo, Steve Mongo McMichael, on April 23rd at 67 years old after a battle with ALS. He spent most of his football career with the Chicago Bears. He won a Super Bowl there, but he was also a member of the Four Horsemen in WCW, and he even had a short run as the United States champion. From Mongo to Ilya Dragunov. At least the one thing they have in common is that they hit hard. Because after that, there ain't much else in common between those two. Sabu passed away on May 11th at the age of 61. That's according to Rob Van Dam, who would know better than probably anyone else, including Wikipedia. He was 61 years old, one of the more influential wrestlers of all time, one of the greatest stars in ECW history. He worked for every major promotion in the world: ECW, WCW, WWE, New Japan, All Japan, AEW, TNA, AAA, CMLL. I mean, you name it, he worked there. And he had just wrestled his last match over WrestleMania weekend against Joey Janela. And what a disaster that was. Rick Derringer died on Memorial Day, May 26th at the age of 77. Died on Memorial Day and was the man who co-wrote Hulk Hogan's Real American theme, which was not even originally intended for Hogan. He's also the man responsible for Demolition's theme, two of the most iconic wrestling theme songs of the 80s. After that, it was WWE Hall of Famer Ozzy Osbourne on July 22nd, who died at 76. The frontman for Black Sabbath for many years, who had just performed his farewell concert just 3 weeks before he died. He made an appearance at WrestleMania 2. He guest hosted an episode of Raw in 2009. And then 2 days later came the death of Hulk Hogan. Terry Bollea, that was July 24th at the age of 71. As big a wrestling death as I have ever covered here on this show. One of the biggest names in the history of the business. And the most famous pro wrestler of all time. At least when you consider the amount of news coverage that his death generated. I know, not taking anything away from El Santo, and you can look at Japan and Ricky. I mean, there's so many different legendary names that had huge mainstream followings in other parts of the world, but I can't think of another pro wrestler that has generated the kind of national and global headlines that his death did when he passed away. Jerry Morrow passed away on July 28th at the age of 75, a staple of Stampede Wrestling as well as New Japan and All Japan. Jonathan Echevarria, a.k.a. Jacka, as he was known on the independent scene for so many years. He passed away on September 7th, suffered a heart attack after a match. He was only 39 years old. On October 19th, it was Bobby Horn, a.k.a. Mo, of Men on a Mission, who died at the age of 58. Legendary announcer Bob Caudle, he died on November 16th at the age of 95. And rounding out the list is Larry the Dog, who died sometime shortly before Survivor Series last month. CM Punk and AJ Lee, they rescued him 11 years ago, and he became world famous, especially after the Brawl Out fiasco in AEW.